Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So this is something that, um, I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but there was a term, maybe it was biorhythms or something that became popular in the 80s or 90s or whatever. But there are things that happen because of time and place. What's going on at that particular time, because time is different. There is, good day. I mean, this is what astrology documents, right? So I went to a Vedic astrologer years ago. Kind of as a, I don't know, as a goof or whatever. I'm open to things, but I'm not somewhat skeptical or whatever it is. But the guy did an amazing job of like just knowing my whole life based in the the date, the time and date I was born. Right, this Vedic astrology is different than, I don't know where the other astrology comes from. Vedic astrology, some of it's been lost, so it's one of those things where it's more accurate than the other astrology. But when I was 10 years old, I got mono, and there was a time where I went into what was called a Rahu. Rahu's a shadow planet, a planet that like people can't see, but it exists. And I had an 18-year Rahu period, which is marked with like insanity, drug use, and just bad things, depression, all these types of things. And there's short Rahu periods and long ones, and I had a long one. And so from the time I was 8 to the time I was 10 to the time I was 28, and that's when my Saturn returned, which is a big thing in the Rahu. You have your Saturn returns every 7 years or 28 years or something like that. I forget what it was. But I went through this really unclear phase where I had no direction and no purpose, and just I mean, it was a lot of drug use and just vague. I was a very vague person, so incompetent, not functioning. And then I found Saj Marg, and he said he never saw a Saturn return as good as mine. This guy had done various chart readings of all the people he did. He said that my had the best one. And that's when I found Saj Marg, and my life changed dramatically. And I don't know very much about astrology, either Vedic or the regular one, but the one thing I do know is Mercury in retrograde, where it's a good time to go in and internalize your life, meditate and focus internally, because everything goes haywire. There's this, the planet Mercury goes retrograde. There's the planets are either are they're there or they're in reverse. It's like these kind of things. Like in the Druid, when you draw the Druid oracle cards, they can be either upright, where you're looking at upright, or they can be upside down. And when they're upside down, it's usually a bad thing, right? This kind of thing. And so, like I said, I know very little about it, but I always know when Mercury's in retrograde, like I'll notice things are going haywire in the world and in my personal life, and communication is down, and things electricity, electrical gadgets aren't working, things aren't working well. It's just sort of one of those times where communications poor, so you have these things that change things, right? The position of the moon changes things. Full moons, like cops will be like really stressed out on a Friday night with a full moon. This is the whole thing. There's like a whole, you know, uh, understanding of things changing, right? So every day is different. I used to notice it when I played sports, and now when I watch sports, there are days where it's a really good day to play sports. Sometimes personally, you have your great days where you're just untouchable, where you're, in the zone. And then there's days where everybody's playing great. And then there's days where it's just a grind and it's just sloppy, a lot of, turnovers and mistakes, bad plays, and you just got to grind out a win, right? And so I notice that when I'm doing things that are physical on the farm, there are days that things just sort of flow, and there are other days that it's just a grind. And so there's things that affect your sleep, affect your, your digestive system. I mean, energies are always changing, and there's places places where you go, some places really resonate with you. If you've ever moved around a lot, there are places that you'll live that are just not your place. It might be a great place. It might be a place where there's it has a lot to offer, but you're just not supposed to be there. You don't have any past association with it or whatever it is. And it's just like, as long as you're there, things go badly. Like, you're just not supposed, it just doesn't resonate with you. Everything's vibrations, and there's, vibrations with people too. There's some people that seem like good people on paper for you. They seem like they would, this is how people have these like computer dating things, like, or whatever. And, there's people who would match up perfectly, but there's nothing there. There's no past life connection. There's no, it's just not one of your people, right? Or it's one of your people who you have bad, energy with or whatever. So, like, it might be somebody that you are connected with, but just in a negative way. And so there's all these things that affect people. And there's, of course, the tides and the moon and the, gravitational pull of the moon. And there's, all these, it affects water. Like, if the moon is affecting the ocean, it's affecting you, because we're mostly water. And so, like, all these things, right? There's all these things that affect all of us individually and collectively. And there's time periods, and like the yugas, and everything's different in the yugas. Like the current yuga, the Kali Yuga, it really does. People who are cheaters and liars and sociopaths do really well. It rewards for bad behavior. But once that changes, and we're in that transitionary period where we're in the end of the Kali Yuga period, and these yugas end with like a bang, oftentimes, especially this one. It's like a doozy. Like, the end of the Kali Yuga is a doozy. But these people who are liars and cheaters that do well will be exposed and won't be able to. It's just the energy won't be with them. Like, everything they do will be against them, right? Like, you've experienced this in your life at times where everything is just going your way. Everything's just falling into place, and, there's this destiny is just unfolding, and you're just riding the current, and it's just great. And there are times where everything's a grind, and you're climbing uphill and things. And, for people who are liars and cheaters in a cheating system and a bad system, in a Kali Yuga period, they're able to get rewarded for bad behavior. This is what the Kali Yuga does. It rewards for bad behavior, where it's so much better when you're a bad person. When you don't have morals, you don't have ethics, you don't have a conscience. You can do really well financially in any other way. But, the stuff builds up. It's all consequences. And the more you lie and cheat, the more you're cynical you get, and the less, your ability to love, your ability to be, have a regular, good, healthy relationships in life. You can win in terms of money and power, but those things are hollow. Like, there's these things called boons in the Indian culture, the ancient, Hindu, Indian spiritual culture, where a saint would give you a boon. And before this yuga, the last yuga was the Mahabharata. Like, the Mahabharata brought in the Kali Yuga, right? So that was the end of time, where people lived a lot longer and had a sense of dharma or duty to God and their, everything. They had a code, and that code fell apart in the Mahabharata, and then the Kali Yuga came in. But, before that, there was, people used to be able to pray and meditate. This is what Buddha did. And they would pray and meditate and do these austerities. They would sit under a tree and meditate for like 300 years or something. And if they did that long enough to a certain deity, like, the god of the sun, or the guy, something like that, right? One of the three, the Brahma, the god of creation, and Vishnu, the god of preservation, and Shiva, the god of destruction, or they, or just God in general. They would be able to go and ask for something, and they would get it. So whatever it was you wanted, whatever, some power, whatever kind of, city, they call these things city spiritual powers. Like, there's a guy, and sometimes it would be like demons who would meditate and do this, and, people with bad intention, right? There's a great story of the goddess Tulsi, who was not a goddess, but she was a devotee of Vishnu, and she was so devotional that she was able to. She married like a demon, some guy who was cast out of the spiritual world by Shiva. It was like Shiva's one of Shiva's souls that was working with him. Shiva's the god of destruction, and Shiva cast the guy down to earth. But he was a demon, and then this Tulsi, this woman Tulsi, was like so devotional. She was able to pray, and she'd wrap her husband in like a shield, so nobody could defeat him. And he was doing demonic shit, and like she was just so Vishnu came down and tricked her, so she got distracted and it wasn't prayed, and Shiva killed the guy. And then Tulsi was like, "You fucked me," So, because she was so devotional to Vishnu, and she was like heartbroken because she got tricked by him, and he made her into the energy behind the Tulsi plant. And that's why the Tulsi plant, we always grow Tulsi, we eat Tulsi. There's it's a whole thing. It's anyways. We do etheric gardening, and it just has it's a great plant to have because of the energy it brings into the garden. People have these Tulsi plants in India, and it's a whole thing. But anyways, there was another story where there was a guy who meditated to Shiva, did these austerities, would meditate and pray and just, sacrifice and be in physical pain. And then asked Shiva, and Shiva said, what do you want? And he goes, well, I want to be able to kill anybody by touching them. And so the guy went around fucking just, he had the touch of death, and he touched people and they'd die, and he was just, fucking causing havoc. And Vishnu came to Shiva and said, what the fuck are you doing? This guy's a fucking menace. We got to get rid of him. He goes, well, he did the austerities. What do you want me to do? I had no choice but to fucking give him what he wanted. And so Vishnu came down as a beautiful woman, and the guy said, oh, he wanted to be with her. And he said, all right, but you're filthy. You gotta shower and clean yourself. So the guy started to wash his hair, and he touched himself in the head, and he eviscerated. He was turning people into ash, right? So he disappeared. So this is like kind of stuff that happened. And so I was talking to this guy Don Savarin, who was this Canadian Abhyasi. He was kind of a dynamic person. He was a natural healer. He was a chiropractor and a nurse, and he had natural healing abilities. People used to go to him, and he was really good at reading people spiritually, and he had these, visions and things. One time he was sitting with Babaji, and Babaji was smoking his hookah. He looked over, and Babaji became the whole universe. And he looked back, and he said to somebody, "Did you see that?" He looked back, and Babaji's like, "See what?" And and he was back to being, it was this thing. But he was talking about how, he gave a talk somewhere, and in the Molina ashram, he came back. He lived in India. He moved from Canada to India. And when Babaji was really sick, he took care of him and his wife. But he was was a healthcare person, and he was nursing Babaji back to health. And Babaji said, "Oh, I want to give you a boon for helping me." And Don said, he had read about boons. He was kind of well versed in spiritual literature, and whenever you got a boon, it would turn on you. Like you would ask for something. Whenever you asked for something for yourself, the thing would be your destruction. Whatever you asked for would be like you would be a downfall. This is the idea of spiritual powers too. Like spiritual powers, if you're not using them for something good, which you might at first, but then, later on you don't do that. So you just, it's a whole thing. And so, it always kicks you in the ass. It always turns on you. And so he said, well, I want you to get better, to Babaji. He said, I want you to be strong. And Babaji was kind of irritated and said, no, I want to give you something. You've done this thing. He said, no, I'm a healer, and you're my patient, and that would make me feel good. And Babaji, his health returned. He was really in dire health because, but if you ever asked something like, do you want a boon? The answer is always something for other people, right? It's always something that's, you know, whatever it is, because you never want to ask for something like a power or a, money or, whatever it might be, because it always will destroy you. Like it's like a thing. But anyways, getting back into what I was saying, things change, and I'm very aware of that. Like we're in different phases, and things have like the year of the chaos, and all the things I've been talking about. And there's just something afoot, right? There's something going on that's different than it was, that at different phases, and you kind of can tell when you're in a new phase. We went into a new phase in 2015. Like things were just different. The internet brought in like a new phase of an information, a tsunami of information, right? And then now of course there's the AI phase. That's in the material world, and then there's the spiritual energy. It's like things just feel different, and things are shifting. And there's been, I don't know exactly when it happened. I mean, it has to do with the internet, but it's a spiritual thing where truth is just coming out in different ways. It's hard to bullshit and lie and do all the things that sociopaths have to do. Even though, like, you see stuff with Trump where the Trumpers just believe him no matter what, when everybody else can just see through his bullshit. But there's always going to be stuff like that. But the truth always comes to the surface. It's just people's inability to see it, right? It's there to be seen, but people are just so fucked up they can't see it. And that's, they don't know how to process the truth because they're all fucked up, especially this younger generation. But we're entering into a phase. And so on Friday night, it was like a full moon or a big moon. I don't know what it was, but I think a full moon. And I didn't sleep well. And I was really restless and irritable and like itchy and just like I was, like I couldn't get comfortable. And the next morning, my wife and I talked, and she said she had the same thing. And so I put a little voiceover out, and it came out, I think, on Saturday. And I saw some of the comments were coming in, and people were saying they had similar situations. I'm going to read some of those. But, there was like a shift. And I know there's been a shift in my sleep where I am having trouble falling asleep, but when I go to sleep, I'm sleeping in a much deeper sleep. Which, a lot of things happen in your sleep. I have a whole voiceover on that, and I'll put that in the Journey series and hear if I have it. I think I have it somewhere. I made a video, and the video disappeared, and I never put it up. But it talked about sleep, and, the interesting thing I found is that when you have that moment, like you can have that moment where you're really tired, right? I was talking to my wife, like when she falls asleep and we're watching TV, I'll look over and she just gets a big smile, like, for a long time. And then she's like really happy. Like, and there's that feeling where you're on the verge of sleep, the melatonin's kicking in, and the melatonin's like a drug. And, you're going into a different consciousness. And you could be, driving, your eyes are getting heavy. You feel this thing, sleep coming on, right? Or you could be, watching TV or doing something and you feel sleep coming on. That moment, a meditation, where and there's a moment where you go from conscious state to an unconscious state. And it's kind of a weird thing because you're very vulnerable. Like, when you think about you're in a safe area, you're in a safe, whatever it might be, in your house, in these things, secure locations. But you're very vulnerable in your sleep, like pranks that people do where, in college pranks where someone draw a dick on your head or a mustache or something with a magic marker. Things that people do to other people. They don't like when they're pranking them when they're asleep, right? Or any of these type of things. But in the animal world, shit'll eat you, like you're sleeping and it's something that's, predatory and, they'll eat you. I mean, it's, if you wake up you're curled up with a poisonous snake, it's coming with you for, I mean, it's all kinds of things, right? Like things can happen when you're sleeping and you can't, shit can crawl in your ears and, all kinds of things, right? Like you go unconscious and it's a weird thing. Like there would be that kind of a state. And you spend a third of your life sleeping. And a lot of things happen spiritually, a lot of information, dreams, and, you process things and, a lot of your development and your connection to divinity, it's like you're dead for that period of time. Your soul leaves their body and you're dealing with things, right? And so sleep is actually maybe the reason for life is sleep in terms of your spiritual evolution and things like that. And so, it's a whole thing. And like I said, if I have a voiceover that I meant to, it was a whole thing. I was going to do this video, and then the video just disappeared, but I had saved one of the voiceovers from it. I don't know what it says. It's like from 4 years ago. But sleep is important. And I notice when my sleep has changed. And sometimes it's physical. Like sometimes it's just, I ate something that didn't agree with me, or just, things are going on physically or whatever. Things have been weird physically for me after COVID. Like I watched this video, and this woman was like I don't know, some kind of healer. It just came out. It just came up out of nowhere, and she had said that, people get old hearts when they stop doing like doing cardiovascular stuff. Playing sports or exercising. Walking is good, but getting your heart rate up, and your heart changes into an old heart. It becomes more, less flexible and less, whatever. But by doing a certain amount of cardiovascular work, it was like 7 minutes of, good cardio work a day where you get your heart rate up. You can like get your heart to change. I had heart issues and weird heartbeats and irregular heartbeats and a bunch of shit post COVID. And so it was a thing. It was an issue, and I knew it was going to be an issue. I've put on some weight and just whatever. And when I tip my head down, when I bend over after COVID, it would just suck the energy out of me. It was just it was bad. And there's other things that happened. And I knew that, there's all that heart stuff related to COVID, and of course the vax, all the stuff where people are having pericarditis and, those carditises, like whatever, these heart things. And so I started exercise. Like I got some, dumbbells, and I walk around our pasture in a fast manner. And I do a little bit of running. Like I can't run like I used to. I used to be able to run fast, and, and it was like, now it's like a whole thing. Like it's like my body just doesn't want to do it kind of thing. But, and then we had my wife had the stepper thing, which I'd used before. I kind of liked it. And I've been doing that. Now I can do it. I used to be able to do it for about 5 minutes. I was doing this exercise this exercise came up to help boost nitric oxide, which is another thing I've been working on, boosting nitric oxide through these breathing exercises. And I take a vitamin supplement for it at times. If I take too much of it, I can't sleep. It's good to get, but the heart rate going. It has it in, watermelon is something where you can get it. But, if you have your nitric oxide, which is this thing that's released, like adrenaline, and it's helpful for me with my headaches, and it's actually, whatever. But anyways, this video came up about Marcola doing these exercises where I showed the people the exercise in the video a time ago. And, it's, you're bending down and raising, putting your hands like forward, and then putting your hands from then you do 10 movements. And the squatting is the toughest one. And then you doing things with your hands above your head and your hands on your sides and these things. And when I first did it, I could only do 2 rounds. You're supposed to do 4. And then I was doing it with weights. But then I started getting dizzy when I was doing it, but now it's fine. And then I get on the stair stepper thing. And I used to be able to do that for about 5 minutes, 2 minutes to 5 minutes. And now I could just do it forever. Like I have to stop myself. And so I feel like my heart has been, I've been doing this for like a year. But, it was something like I had to do. I was like getting, whatever it was, like just my age and, just, whatever. And so my health came back, like that kind of stuff, and I'm just in better shape now. And, but it's like it takes effort. Like you get older, you have to, if you don't do anything, your body starts to go into atrophy. I don't like to do supplements, and I don't like to, I just like to, I always felt like sleep and exercise, exercise became just walking, and doing things around the farm. But, anyways, so getting back to the sleep thing. So sleep's important. Like there's a, thing that happens. And, exercise is like key for better sleep. So there's the physical stuff. But then there's stuff like there's a disturbance in the force, right? All the things I've been saying, like things are shifting. And I notice like my sleep's different, and when I have deep sleep and there's a lot of it, like it's where I'm getting like where I'm just gone, like out of it kind of sleep. I there's usually something going on spiritually where there's some like there's some transition you need help with, getting physically sick. Sleep is important. Where there has to be a like you're being prepared for something, like a where there's like when they have the bends where people go deep sea diving and they're down really deep, you have to come up slowly, or something to do with the oxygen in your blood, whatever. You can get like this. It's a big problem, right? You have to come up slowly, so there's the sea pressure, whatever it is. I could go read it. Yeah, I'll just go. I looked it up here. The bends is a colloquial term for decompression sickness, a condition that can occur in scuba divers and other individuals who experience rapid changes in atmospheric pressure. It's also known as the bends, with a D or with a Z, or Carcassean disease. Decompression happens when dissolved gases like nitrogen form bubbles in the bloodstream and tissues upon rapid ascent from a deep dive. So you have to come up slowly in these things, right? All right, I forget what I was talking about. But anyways, so this changes that are going on or whatever's happening, sometimes it's individual. Then I talk to my wife and she's like, she had a bad night. And I'm like, all right, the energy could be different here. Of course, there's a full moon, but I put it out there. So there's a bunch of comments. Let me read some of the comments here. This is going to be kind of a weird video anyway, just in general. But one person wrote, pockets on the topic of full moon. I heard that parasites are most active during full moon cycles. Take with a grain of salt. I'm not pockets. Hi, PayPal. God is boring. Great merch idea. Yeah, because I was talking about God being boring, which I just remembered because of that thing. I'm not pockets. Like, Pockets of Future is an idea of people who are living now and preparing for the way the world's going to be in a post-Kali Yuga situation. So it's people who are aware that there's a change going on and are adjusting themselves in some way and preparing, and whatever that means to prepare, and creating a pocket of the future that can survive. There's always some people that survive a transitionary period, right? So when there's an extinction level event where the population is reduced, and it could be a small area or it could be in a global situation, there has to be some pockets of the future, people who are transitioning and understanding and reading what the signs and are preparing for what's about to happen, and then going to be able to make that transition, because the world's going to feel differently, and it's going to be, you're going to wake up, it's like you're in a foreign country. It's like you're in a different world. That's what happens, like these changes, and this particular change with the Kali Yuga and the rest of it, a paradigm shift. And so there has to be people that figure that out and start preparing. And so that's what Pockets of the Future. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not a guy who just has lots of, I like pockets, but it's not that kind of pocket, right? It's not like I'm, people say Polly Pockets. I'm like, fuck, I'm not Polly Pockets. It's not like I'm obsessed with pockets or some shit, right? Like it's Pockets of the Future are groups of people. And this, somebody wrote, there's energy and money and time going into building Pockets of the Future, but it's all coming out of my pockets. So I don't even know what that's from. So I'm scrolling through the comments here. And so there were a lot of ones about the sleep, but I think that was 2 videos ago. Somebody said there was a full moon, as you said, and Mars was in retrograde. Mars is the planet of war. So that probably wasn't very good. But, I'm talking about some long-term thing here now that I'm thinking about. Like, there was one night where I was really restless. But I feel like there's a shift in my sleep. And so, like, I've put these things out before, and it's like, who else is experiencing these things, right? And, of course, there's going to be some people that do. Like, that's just the way it is. Like, some people will be going through a similar thing. Like, if I say I've had a headache today, people are like, I had a headache today. It'll be like that. But then, is it a lot of people, right? So here's a person. I had horrific nightmares, no joke. Woke up very upset. I was very upset all day Saturday. Something was very wrong with the full moon. But or it could be cleaning, it could be processing things. Um, like a transition, like, I mean, you have to, when you're in a death process, you want to die peaceful. So the restlessness is, in terms of Sajmark meditation, it's one of the, when you go through when you've gone to a higher level spiritually, one of the four conditions, and I forget the other three, one of them's like bliss or something, but one of them's restlessness. Like it's just part of it. Like every spiritual point, restlessness is part of it. And there has to be a restlessness for, to change. Like whatever, restlessness is, one of the words, but there has to be, things that make you want to change and go up and, push through something, right? You have to have motivation. When you're uncomfortable, you do things to rectify that situation. Discomfort's a part of, I mean, think about like a butterfly coming out of cocoon. It has to go through that process from being a caterpillar to being a butterfly, right? It's evolution, physical evolution. There was a story that went out. Some guy helped a caterpillar by opening up the cocoon and making it easier for it. Saw it was struggling, and then it didn't become a butterfly. It was like half, like the wings didn't get. It's like it going through the whole process made it push the fat caterpillar stuff out into becoming beautiful wings and things. And it was only the wings were small and it still had a fat body, and it just died a miserable death of not being caught between the stage of being a butterfly and a caterpillar. The struggle was important. You think about frogs. We've had a lot of frog activity here. We had this giant bullfrog, my wife and I. We have this big pond that fills with water in the spring. It's like all the water from the pasture. We live in like a flood zone, a swampy area. And then we kayaked, and there was this giant frog. We couldn't believe the flippers on it. Like I thought it was like an otter or like a snapping turtle. I couldn't believe how big it was. It was huge. I've never seen a bullfrog this big. It kept on surfacing, and its flippers were like, 4 or 5, like 3 inches. It was like the whole thing was like, it was like, giant, just big ass bullfrog. And, tadpoles and pollywogs is a better word. It's just a great word. When they go from being like a fish to a frog, which is an amphibian, and there's all these creatures that go through evolution. There's these red-spotted newts, and in the western part of the country, they're toxic and poisonous. But in the eastern part of the country, there are these little newts, and they're called like miracle newts, and they'll just go walking across the forest. I only seen one at a time, and I used to see them all the time in our first homestead in Virginia, and I haven't seen any in years. But they start off as a larvae. Here, I just looked it up. The red-spotted newt, also known as the eastern newt, has a unique life cycle that involves 3 distinct stages: aquatic larvae, terrestrial eft, and adult aquatic adult. I'm fascinated with things that evolve. So aquatic adult, they start off as eggs laid in water, hatch to aquatic larvae. They metamorphosize into a brightly colored efts that live on land before returning the adult as water as adults. And so I've seen the adults in the water, and they have little spots on them. They still have the orange spots, but they're now like brownish. And if you see the images of the thing, but the orange ones, they're bright orange, and it's like orange is probably my favorite color. It's just and they're bright orange, but they got these little red spots on them, and they're so brilliant you can't miss them. But things think they're toxic, because they used to be, or they're toxic in California. Similar ones are toxic in California. Like there's a story of one of them crawled into a guy's coffee pot when he was camping, and he drank the coffee, and he was like dead within minutes, because he boiled the thing and the toxicity released. But these little orange creatures, and I'd see them every year. they'd be crawling through our yard, and they were like crazy, like, whatever they were. But they have these 3 stages, and of course it's painful to go through, physically painful to go through these stages. When you're going through a revolutionary period, it's restless in these things, which, they're shifting. There's a shift in consciousness happening at some point. This is going to take some time, and people's consciousness is shifting. Like, there's going to be a different world, and people are going to see things differently. It's going to open up things or whatever. Like, if there's evolution afoot, where there has to be. Like, because we're going in the wrong fucking direction. If we don't go up, there isn't a reverse in our tendency, we'll be cave people in about fucking 3 years, right? But anyways, let me read this next comment here. I'm gonna get through these comments. I couldn't sleep and was up early the day before, so proper knacked, but slept for 4 hours with which should have been double. But the night you were saying, even though I was across the pond, shouldn't make. I kind of got that. I was going to say this person is saying shit that isn't. Sounds like English stuff. Should make too much of differences, but when I woke up, my left leg felt like I was stung and throbbing around it, and still the same, but could just be nothing but shared because I had similar nights. Stay blessed all. So that's the other thing. Like, when I have those nights, like, I'll wake up and I'll be sleeping on my arm, fucked up. As I've gotten older, like, I wake up, I hurt my shoulder, and I've had to, I've done all these exercises, and part of that is because my shoulder, I couldn't sleep on one side. Like, I woke up one night, and I went to this chiropractor who I think fucked it up when he adjusted it too, but or irritated it, but it was just getting worse. And then I slept on it wrong, and it was like fucked. And it's just gotten better now. It took forever, and part of that was me doing exercises and just strengthening it or whatever. But like, when you sleep so deeply that things become like pins and needles or whatever, and that like, you're in pain and you don't even know it because you're just out. Like, you've left your body and your body's just in a fucked up position. Okay, see, I scroll through the comments. It's kind of a weird video where I'm scrolling through the comments and reading. Yes, I felt restless Friday night. For once, I don't feel like telling Rachel Maddow to be quiet. That was because of the Christy Nome thing. I'm 62, and throughout most of my 20s working, might make jobs and seeing how sucky and vapid people are. It was depressing to ask if this was really what life is. Then I became a mom and gave me purpose and motivation. Thanks for the Sunday sermon, Brother Paul. So this person had issues sleeping that night as well. So here were some of the other comments. I've been restless. I guess got to make these bigger. It's just my eyes are blurry this morning. I've been restless. I had restless nights like Friday night regularly for the last year, with things getting really bad over the past couple of months. I even had a few bouts of full-blown insomnia, completely restless at night and staying awake for 30 hours before crashing. I finally started having a decent night's sleep every night for about a week and a half now. It's something that I've dealt with on and off much of my life, but never for long and drastically, consistently. I've heard others speak of so much happening to more spiritual, sensitive people who pick up on the chaos within the collective, which I think is a good way to look at it. Says here, someone else wrote, Linda McMahon's Trump's pick for Secretary of Education did not know what AI is. She's calling it A1, like the steak sauce. So we're going to have AI in every A1 in every classroom. The clown show is going into overdrive. That's quite funny. Okay, so I started searching Linda McMahon. So I put Linda in, and I think I put an M. It was early on in the spelling. And then it immediately, they recommend things, right? And the first recommendation was Linda McMahon A1. And there's multiple videos. I have a short clip I'll show you coming up. But then somebody wrote this. Interesting, there is a bot summarizing your videos. And up above that, there was this, let me find it here. I got to scroll back up. And so that somebody wrote that, and there was a comment which was very weird, and I didn't know what was going on with this. Let me see. I've got to scroll back here. Okay, so this is a comment that came before the one that I had just. Oh wow, I lost it again. Bummer. See if I scroll up here. I had it, then I went back to it, and a YouTube changed. Here it is. The video discusses the potential collapse of civilization, covering topics like COVID-19, origins, population decline, Trump's cabinet meetings, and the need for spiritual connection. The creator expresses skepticism about official narratives and emphasizes preparing for societal changes. And there was another one above that somewhere. Let me go back, see if I can find that. So that there's these comments that are showing up. I don't know if people are putting the comments in them, like somebody's taking a YouTube, like a bot comment or a summarization, or if these comments are just appearing now from these bots that are watching the videos. Like, I don't know. Maybe somebody else knows. I'm sure somebody knows, or at least is kind of trying to figure it out. So this is to a different video, and it's the same YouTube channel. The video discusses Trump's trade war with China, potential economic collapse, and Trump's negotiation tactics. It criticized Trump's approach as a chaotic and lacking long-term strategy, while also explaining broader geopolitical tensions and spiritual perspectives. That I didn't screenshot the whole comment. But, so that's happening. Like, there's all this shit happening in the whole thing here. But there were other things here where somebody else wrote about the Friday night. I had the same problem Friday night. I was tossing and turning and uncomfortable the whole night, kicking the blankets off, opening and closing the window. I ended up peeling my clothes off piece by piece because my skin was crawling. I just couldn't relax, let alone sleep. It was absolutely pouring out too, which was loud. I don't know. It was a strange night. I felt completely overstimulated. Every time I get close to sleep, I start to itch. And I was getting at, I don't know what I was getting at, but me too. Yeah, so that's what I was having, like the itching and, the sensitivity of the skin. And there was a couple other ones that said that, but there's enough here. But anyways, so that's that, this weird shit going on, and we'll see if it's something that's, I'll check back in with this stuff. We'll see how it happens. I had the same restless night. I was waking up all night until 5 a.m. until I slept to about 9 without waking up. Very similar situation there. Don't sleep anyways, but definitely was tossing and turning, kicking sheets, woke up and started day at 4. So yes. So people were having the same experience. So anyways, there's that. Let's get into the other stuff. Kind of a weird video today. Okay, before we get into these video clips, one more comment to get to here. Person wrote, "It's not that your listeners need proof that you know what you're talking about, but if someone was looking for objective proofs, you nailed the year of the chaos months before The Economist." The thing is that, I have different abilities. So this is a job that you need, like any job, you need some talent, right? Whatever my job is here, whatever you would call it, you need some talent, right? You have to be, like good socially. Like there's some people who have the ability to draw people in. I'm going to get into Stephen A. Smith in a bit, who's running for president. So shit like that. But there's people who have social abilities and people who are, like Trump has the ability to sell himself and to tell people what they want to hear. Like everyone has their, whatever comedians have their different ways of being funny. You have to have some talent. And it's different for different people. And so, some of the talent that I have is that I am introverted, and I think about things, and I'm dyslexic, so I have pattern recognition, and these are just, terms and words for, what makes up my internal world. So what this is about, people who listen to me here, it's about my thoughts and views, and, they're different than other people's because I'm a different person, right? I'm a different sort of a cat, right? But the other part is, and this is a lot of inventors have this, a lot of creative people have this, but they don't know it or they don't develop it. It's not cultivated in the same way. But when you meditate and you connect to God, the answers are just there. When you have the courage to ask God questions, and I very seldom use the word courage, but I do here, because when you ask God questions, oftentimes you don't like the answers. That's why I was saying about how Master Chargy said that Christians want to go to the Son, God's Son, because they don't want to go directly to the Father because, there's a fear of going before God. Because when you go before God, it's very disconcerting. And so it's, destabilizing because most people, all people, there are answers you don't fucking want. There are things that, in your terms of your physical life, like there's things you should give up, but you don't want to give up, right? So there's articles that you don't want to read about things that you have in your life that you like and you don't want to give up, so you don't look for the answer, right? You don't want the answer because the answer is going to say, hey, you got to stop doing what you like to do. And that's everybody. But most people, it's way worse. I mean, there's levels to it. And so people don't want to go to God because once you go to God, God's going to be telling you shit all the fucking time you don't want to hear. It's just going to be right in front of your fucking face and you got to deal with it, right? And so it's not hard to do that. It's unpleasant. When you're making mistakes all the time and you're indulging, you want to make those mistakes. You don't want to give up making those mistakes. You don't want to give up that freedom of choice to do the wrong thing. So you don't ask God questions, right? It's like the same reason you don't go to the doctor. Again, doctors are whatever they are. I mean, I don't go to doctors for different reasons, because you don't want the answer, right? You don't want to say you don't. What doctor would say, you have to give up this, you have to give up that. Of course, doctors don't do that; they give you shitty pills now. But a real healer, if you went to a healer, they would say, well, you're gonna have to change your lifestyle. What I was saying earlier about having to exercise because I've gotten older and I have to, you have to keep on fighting, the inevitability of time and the rages of time on your body as you go through your so-called golden years. It's not really golden, but you can live a healthy life till you die, but it takes a lot more effort as you get older. Like you have to there's things you can't do, right? And there's things that in the illit, killit, and zillit, there are these three things in the Sajmark system. I think these are I don't think they're Sanskrit words. I think they come from, I don't know, Persian maybe. I don't know what they were. There's three things you need to have in your life to be a saint. One is critics, because it helps you keep you humble. The other thing is a little less money, because it makes you less indulgent. And the third thing is poor health, because you have to be more moderate. When you have poor health, you can't overindulge. Two of the things are about indulgences, right? The less money, just slightly less money than you need, and slightly poor health. Not like you're sickly all the time, just enough to where you have to be more conscious of your choices, and so you're more moderate, less indulgent because of those things. And so we live in an overindulgent society, and everybody has their secret little pleasures, which might be okay at the beginning, but as time goes on, you have to give up things. And when you are dealing with God, those things are going to be right in your fucking face. And so that's why people don't talk to God. But, it's something I do regularly through the Sajmark system, and, receive the answers, and, I deal with them the best I can, and I do my best to cooperate on a daily basis. I have my own way of doing things, but for the most part, especially major decisions, I just do what God tells me to do, whether I like it or not, because I know that I'm inevitably going to do that anyway. It's just going to, if I decide to, be naughty and not listen to God, it's only a matter of time before yeah, that was a mistake. And then I have to clean up the mess and whatever. So I've accepted God knows more. And it takes, some level of just, I don't know, willing to hear bad news, willing to hear things you don't want to hear to cultivate that relationship. But when you have that relationship, you just know things because God will show you everything you need to know. And, I had this thing I had to do, which I was it was like getting old for me, the year of, because it's just kind of goofy. It's like a bit. But, I said year for the chaos, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's here. Anyways, let's go into the videos. Let's go to some chaos. Let's go this is definitely going to be more chaos stuff today. Okay, so a few people back-to-back comments said that the Freemasons have a quote from Order to Chaos, which I believe I've heard before. So this is the dude that's been leaving me all the comments about my videos. There's at least 4 of them to my last 4 videos, summarizing my videos. And so, you know, that's happening. So I guess they have this bot go and watch videos and then leave these comments, which is probably a good business strategy for them. So there's that. So this is an older video because Trump's hair was kicking it back then.
Okay. You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book. And you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what 1 or 2 of your most favorite Bible verses are,
well,
and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's...
I wouldn't want to get into it. Now, people who really love the Bible, they can't wait to tell you their favorite verses. In fact, they post their favorite verses all the time on your videos and shit because they have it, right? People can't wait to tell you their favorite quotes from their religion. They just can't wait. Like, it's things that, they live by. They're mantras, right? They're things that they think about all the time. They're teachings. And, the one thing that religion does well is when you have, like, John 3:16 is not a good quote because it's a bullshit thing, right? I've said this before. Either Jesus said it wasn't true or it was something that was edited, which I think is the second. And what it did was brilliant. It's a brilliant strategy because it made Christianity your gateway to heaven. That the only way to get to heaven was through Jesus, and Christianity was the gatekeeper to Jesus. And so they made Christianity the gatekeeper to heaven. It made all other religions and spiritual practices demonic because you didn't get to heaven doing those things. So it's a brilliant strategy, right? But it's complete bullshit. But there's other things that are in the Bible that are good. The kingdom of heaven is within is the best one that I know of. There might be other ones, that would be the best teaching. And if you gravitate to those teachings, right, then it's, it's there. And there's going to be these moments when you're a spiritual person where something is just going to click. And it usually will come from some spiritual teaching. And so that's why when you really are a spiritual seeker or you're a religious person, you're going to have these things that really appeal to you about your books, about your dogma, right? And so Trump, let's watch it again.
You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book. And you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what 1 or 2 of your most favorite Bible verses are,
well,
and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. When I talk about the Bible, it's very, very personal. So I don't want...
It's very personal. I don't want to get into it. Like, as a Christian, you're witnessing. What do you mean personal? Like, you're very personal, right? Like, there's a porn star out there who's on Jimmy Kimmel's who brought out a bunch of orange mushrooms, and she picked one that looked like your penis. Like, your shit is out there, bro. Your divorce stuff, and your ex-wife said that you tried to rape her or whatever. Like, it's in court documents. Like, there's like, what do you mean? You don't want to talk about God? Like, this is what Christians love to do. I mean, all religious people. And if you didn't give your favorite quote, then give some quotes that you like. Like, this is your chance to be able to say these things that are quotes that you like, right? And so he's saying it's very personal, and that's his way of saying, this is his bullshit thing because he doesn't read the Bible. Like, just, all right, name one quote. Explain one part of the Bible. I bet, like, ask him, like, what's John 3:16? I bet he would say, I don't want to get into it. I don't know, it's personal, right?
Very personal. When I talk about the Bible, it's very personal. So I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to
specifics. Said no Christian ever. Said no person who loves the Bible ever, right? Like, it's when you're into something, you like to talk about it. Like, because if he hasn't read the Bible, he's not a Christian, right? This is fucking...
cite a verse that
you
like.
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. I think it's...
Probably equal. They're quite different books. And he's definitely an Old Testament guy. because he's very remedial and he's really Jewish, right? So he's totally an Old Testament where God is presented as a wrathful God that tells Abraham to sacrifice his son and all these other things, right? And, what about Abraham's son who's just going to lay down and let his dad stick a knife in him, right? What the fuck is that? I mean, But he's an Old Testament guy. He doesn't know the difference. Tell him what's the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament.
It's just an incredible, the whole Bible is an incredible, I joke very much so. They always hold up The Art of the Deal. I say my second favorite book of all time. But
his own book is, he likes the Bible better than Art of the Deal. My second favorite book of all time, The Art of the Deal. I mean, what a piece of shit this guy is. And every Christian should know he's not a Christian. And he's not doing Christian shit. That's the other thing. Christians who vote for Trump think that at least he's going to do Christian things because he's made them feel like he's good at making people feel like he gets you and he's like you and he's not. He's the little Lord Fauntleroy who was born with a silver spoon in his fucking fat old ghoul hole. And he's, was given a bunch of money by his dad and ran his dad's company into the ground, but somehow was so great at self-promoting that he kept on bouncing back. And, he's not good at anything. He's not thoughtful. He doesn't make right decisions. He doesn't have intuition. And he's not spiritual.
I just think the Bible is just something very special.
But the Bible's the bee's knees. It's the tops.
Let's talk about the race here in Iowa. It's getting really, really competitive, very neck and neck between you and Cruz. This
just came up, but I want to see it. Jake Tapper's wearing no somber tie, but his collar's up like a douche.
An entity called Central Marketing Incorporated. It's polling people in Iowa, asking them about different attack lines against you.
Well, let's take Cruz.
Let me
just be doing that.
He shouldn't be doing it. We don't know. I don't know for a fact that it's Ted Cruz.
I'll tell you what. If you look at his answer, because somebody asked him, "Do you think it's you?" and he went,
So this is back in 2016. Ted Cruz. Look at him. Look at him open his ghoul hole.
Believe me, after I saw that, I said, "It's him." He shouldn't be doing that. Very unethical.
Well, let me ask you.
Very unethical.
One of the potential attack lines has to do with an answer you gave to Frank Luntz months ago when you said that you've never asked God for forgiveness. Do you regret making that remark?
No, I have great relationship with God. I have great relationship with the evangelicals. In fact, nationwide, I'm
yeah, but that's not God. Those are people who think that they're godly people. It's the first thing is you always have to beg God for forgiveness. In the Sajmark system that I do, it's all about being positive. And you're not still supposed to dwell on your sins. When you do the cleaning, you don't look for specific things. It's all about positive. Anything that's, positive suggestions, any suggestions should be worded positively. It's a whole thing. Because your mind should go in the positive. When I was getting my master's degree in counseling, the program was good in the sense that it was a New Age program in Santa Fe, New Mexico. But it was a good program from the sense that it showed you experienced as a counselor and as a client. We do these kind of role plays and things. Each model, and there's so many of them, not every model, but as many models as they could put in there of psychology, because there's different psychological approaches, and they're significantly different. And depending on the counselor or therapist you go to, their worldview is, it might be something that you're not into, right? Like the behaviorist, which is cause and effect, Pavlov's dog, is quite different than these other, Gestalt and these other kind of more theoretical different things, right? Freud and Jung and these things are very, the Freudianism is just weird. The original psychological model. Freud's just fucking batshit crazy and kind of demonic. But anyways, they show you the different elements of these psychological models. And the problem I have with psychology and counseling, and the reason I don't do it today, is that it's problem-centered, right? It's about what you shouldn't do. You're focused on what you're doing wrong or what you don't like or what the problem. And you meditate on the problem and you just make the problem stronger. That's the Sajmark system philosophy. That you have inside you, the original creation, when God created the universe, there was this thought that created the universe. And you that thought force is akin to your thought force, is identical to your human thought force. And that's why people can create all kinds of things, but most of them are an abomination, a knockoff of God's creation, and not aligned with God's creation, because they're, done by a singular ego who creates its own, universe. Like, people have their own universe inside themselves. And so, this idea that you would use that thought force to think about the problem just makes the problem worse. So you should always focus on the solution. Like, we meditate on divinity in the heart, right? We don't meditate on our sins or our issues, but we clean them away, without specifically dwelling on them or looking at them and it's like re-traumatizing yourself. If you're constantly thinking about things that are bad, you are building some scars inside you based in these. Like, so when you have an addiction, you're thinking about things all the time. And so if you want to quit smoking, if you give yourself the suggestion, don't smoke, like if that's your mantra, oh, don't smoke, don't smoke, don't smoke, eventually you'll be like, oh man, I want a cigarette, right? Because, you're just thinking about cigarettes all the time. The suggestion should be healthy. Be healthy, be strong, have the capacity to have clear lungs, right? So if you're focusing on being healthy, you put your mind on that instead of don't smoking, or don't eat bad foods, or don't drink alcohol. Like, no, don't. Your subconscious mind doesn't process those things, right? And so in the Sajmark system, giving yourselves, wailing to God and dwelling on your sins and thinking of yourself as a sinner is a bad thing, because a sinner sins, right? But there is a maxim. But there are these 10 maxims of Sajmark, right? And these maxims are all worded positively, as opposed to the 10 commandments, right? 10 maxims. But they're worded positively instead of thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not whatever, right? And so, those things. But these 10 maxims are, the 10th maxim is, at bedtime, feeling the presence of God, repent for the wrongs committed, beg for forgiveness in a supplicant mood, resolving not to allow repetition of the same. And so you think about any mistake that you made, choices that you made were against God's will. And you should hopefully get to a point where you don't need to do this maxim because you're just doing the right thing. But if you make a mistake and you made a mistake, then you would go and think about the mistake, and then you pray to God about it, and you would say, please help me not to make this mistake again. And then you leave it. You don't dwell on it. But this idea that you have to, constantly go before God, because you're going to make mistakes. So every religion has this in it, right? Confession. Trump grew up, I think he was a Catholic, so, when you're confessing, you're begging God for forgiveness. And so for him to say that he's never begged God for forgiveness means he's saying that he never did anything wrong, which we know about Trump, right? I'll show you the original clip here. I'll go back to Jake Tapper's here in a second, and then we'll show you the original clip. But, he he clearly needs to beg God for forgiveness for something. Like, he's done all kinds of things. He's made all kinds of mistakes. But he doesn't think he ever did anything wrong. And so he never is repenting because he doesn't really believe in God. And he thinks of himself as God. And this is everything you need to know. That Christians should have heard this shit and said, this guy's the Antichrist. Like, Trump is like the Antichrist. There's so many of people who could potentially be that. But Trump is one of the big ones because he's president. And he's not fucking religious at all, and when he's pretending to be. Like, he's totally faking to be a Christian. Like, I know a lot more about Christianity than he does, and he's claiming to be a Christian, how much he loves the Bible, and he's just bullshitting. He's a fucking liar, and they don't get it. Like, they just right in their fucking faces, and they refuse to see it, right? Let's go back here a little bit here.
Forgiveness. Do you regret making that remark?
No, I have great relationship with God. I have great relationship with the evangelicals. In fact, nationwide, I'm up by a lot.
Yeah, that means nothing. It means you've conned these people into believing that you're one of them, which you've done with lots of groups. But that doesn't mean you're one of them, right? Like, that's his reaction when asked, do you regret saying you never beg God for forgiveness? Which, everybody should do. It's just something you do, right? Like, you just have to do it. Like, it's the only way that you change or whatever it is, right? Whatever, repent. I mean, it's part of every religious tradition because people fuck up. You make mistakes. It's okay. It's okay to say you make mistakes. But it isn't about, he makes it into something political here. You know, I have a great relationship with God. You know, I have a great relationship with the evangelicals who have, you know, a lot of them believe that the same old bullshit about Palestine, that, you know, that Israel is the promised land, and a lot of they're you know, problematic in lots of ways. But Jesus Christ, this guy.
Back nationwide, I'm up by a lot. I'm leading everybody. But I like to be good. I don't like to have to ask for forgiveness, and I am good. I don't do a lot of things that are bad. I try and do nothing.
You banged a fucking porn star when you were married to your wife and then paid her off. And then fired the guy who paid her off for you and threw him under the fucking bus. Like, your whole life is bad mistakes. You're a fucking slumlord. Like, you screwed over people, vendors, like renegotiated and screwed them over and bullied them. Like, you're a fucking criminal. I'm a good guy. All I ever do is good. And in fact, I might be better than God. I mean, my book, Art of the Deal, is like the second best book. I'm right next to God as being, you know, I might be Jesus' reincarnation. That's how good I am.
I think that's bad. I live a very different life than probably a lot of people would think, and I have a very great relationship with God, and I have a very great relationship with evangelicals, and I think that's why I'm doing so well with Iowa.
The life you have.
Yeah, but that's not the issue. Is that
have now, when you say that you try to do good, that sounds very different from decades of tabloid media coverage in New York, in which some of your wilder escapades were.
Well, I'm talking about over the last number of years.
Okay.
I've been, you know, I mean, I'm leading a very good life. I try to lead a good life, and I have. And frankly, the reason I'm doing so well in Iowa and leading the polls, including the CNN poll, where I'm 33-20 in Iowa. And by the way, one of the things that I didn't like that Ted Cruz did last night, he said, oh, he's doing so well in the polls. He's not doing so well in the polls because nationally he's not doing well. New Hampshire is doing very poorly.
You guys go back and forth on leading in Iowa, just in Iowa.
The only place he's doing fairly well is in Iowa. That's the only place. If you look at these other places, he's not doing well.
You know, so that's this question, like just a horrible answer to that, right? Let me show the original clip here. So this is Trump dropping the water sign, you know, from, you know, wherever the water sign is from, whatever that guy is named, the wickedest man in the world. And here he is with Frank Lutz and Aleister Crowley and Donald Trump at the Family Leadership Summit.
Have you ever asked God for forgiveness? That's a tough question. I don't think in terms of
It's not a fucking tough question. This is what a grifter does when he gets asked on his bullshit, right? And he can't answer it because he'll fucking, you know, he'll be smote. God will smite him. He'll be smoten.
That's a tough question. I don't think in terms of I'm a religious person. Shockingly, because people are so shocked when they find this out. I'm Protestant. I'm Presbyterian. And I go to church and I love God and I love my church. And Norman Vincent Peale, the great Norman Vincent Peale was my pastor. The power of positive thinking. Everybody's heard of Norman Vincent Peale. He was so great. He would give a sermon. You never wanted to leave. Sometimes we have sermons. Every once in a while we think about leaving a little early, right? Even though we're Christians. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, Frank, would give a sermon. I'm telling you, I still remember his sermons. It was unbelievable. And what he would do is he'd bring real-life situations, modern-day situations, into the sermon. And you could listen to him all day long. When you left
So he went like twice.
The church, you were disappointed that it was over. He was the greatest guy. And then, you know, he passed away, but he was great. He wrote The Power of Positive Thinking, which is great.
But have you ever asked God for forgiveness?
Boom, see? Again, the guy's like, stop with the fucking bullshit. This guy fucking gets it.
I'm not sure I have. I just go on and try and do a better job from there. I don't think so. I think if I do something wrong, I think I just try and make it right. I don't bring God into that picture. I don't. Now, when I take, you know, when we go to church and when I drink my little wine, which is about the only wine I drink, and have my little cracker. I guess that's a form of asking.
You mean Jesus' blood and and his flesh? The little cracker and a little wine. Have a little wine and a little cracker. It's supposed to be, the wine is horrible and the fucking cracker is unedible. It's supposed to be you're drinking the blood of Christ and eating his flesh. Like, that's how fucked up the Christian, the Catholic religion is. But, like, that's fucked. Anyways.
For forgiveness, and I do that as often as possible because I feel cleansed. Okay, but to me that's important. I do that. But in terms of officially, I could say absolutely, and everybody. I don't think in terms of that. I think in terms of let's go on and let's make it right.
Because you would want to do that with God's help, but he doesn't ask for God's help because he knows he's doing bullshit things that God would never allow him to do. And he's not really a Christian. I mean, maybe he's gone to church a few times and listened to that guy. That's possible. But he's not anything. He's not a religious person because, he doesn't believe he does anything wrong. And he just said that with Jake Tapper. He lives a good life. But, the guy went bankrupt numerous times. He's done fucking bad, evil shit. 2 divorces, and cheating on his current wife and just all kinds of shit. Like, those are just, big events. But it's his attitude, like all the things he's doing in the world right now. I mean, he should be begging God for forgiveness on a minute-to-minute basis. And that's the only way that you change is if you get into a state, and it doesn't have to involve God consciously, but unconsciously, where you're desperate, right? Where you feel like a piece of shit. Like, real change comes from, like, real, like, loathing, like, just bad moments, where you're completely rattled. People don't like to change. I'm in the change business, and the change part has to come from some sense in you that you just really want to do better. Like the 10th maxim, you're supposed to have like tears in your eyes when you do it. Really, like, wow, this was a mistake, and please God help me not to do this again. And I just really want to be better, and I vow to God I'm never going to do this again. Please help me. This idea of what you're making a strong statement, but also asking for God's help. And so this is like, important. It's important to do that because we're going to make mistakes. And it can be small things, but they're, bad habits that you get into. And you're breaking patterns, you're breaking habits. And, change has to come from a place of, really like weeping and just really, a deep sense that you want to do better or whatever it might be. But Trump doesn't have any of that stuff, right? It's because he's he's like the AntiChrist. So this is Gretchen Whitmer. She's in the Oval Office with Trump for some reason. Remember, she said this thing. We'll go to that next. I didn't make a joke that I wanted to, and now I can go back to it. She said something really stupid at the convention. But going back to what Trump said, that's a tough question. No, it's not. Yes, I've asked God for forgiveness. It's the easiest question to answer in the world. And it, makes you sound humble, even if you're lying. It's an easy question to answer. Yeah, I ask God for forgiveness all the time. I mean, that's what you should say. Like, you just should say it. Like, what's wrong with that? If you believe in God, then you should be asking God for forgiveness because there are two things. You believe in God and you make mistakes. So those two things go together. But this happened.
It's why we're working so hard to make sure that, we work with the Army Corps and erect a barrier so that the Asian carp can't get into Lake Michigan. It'll devastate the ecosystem, the
Asian carp
economy, tourism, and it's 20% of the world's fresh waters in the Great Lakes, Mr. President, which is why it's so important that as a nation we protect the pristine waters. Yep.
And, all of a sudden, I assume the lakes, they're all interconnected, right? Yeah. So at some point, they're going to be in the other lakes. And so we're going to work hard on that. I spoke with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they have a method. It's a pretty gruesome method.
These Asian carp that jump into boats like they're taking over these lakes. They're invasive species. This is what this is about. So for whatever reason, these people don't like each other. And, I mean, Gretchen's looking frickin' like totally like a dude and a ghoulish.
But it's a method, and I think they know what to do, so we're going to work on that very hard. And thank you, Governor, very much.
So that was weird. What's this thing here? And she's here or there.
I just want to add, so we're working very hard with Democrats, the governor, with Matt Hall, with a lot of
He's got the Gulf of America here. Like, he's such a tool.
transportation, Sean, and all of the people trying to keep Selfridge Air Force Base open, strong, thriving, and I think we're going to be successful, Governor. I think we'll be very successful at that. We've gotten some good feedback from Pete Hegseth. And
All right, so there's that. I don't know where she's here. Here she is with this one. There's that. That was the whole exchange there. Let's go back to her comments at the convention. And so there's this thing here. Let's see if I find it here. Oh, here it is. This is it.
But in Detroit, they call me Big Gretch.
They call me Big Gretch, Macho Man.
Donald Trump called me that woman from Michigan as an insult.
Look, she's brushing it off her shoulder like Obama did. Like, that was totally staged. Like, she rehearsed that forever. She's batshit crazy. That's not an insult. Like, she's going to say it here.
Being a woman from Michigan is a badge of honor.
Oh, yeah, do your thing. Do your... Like, that wasn't an insult. He was saying that woman from Michigan, you know, like, whatever it is, you know, maybe he says it in a dismissive way, but, like, it's just silly. Like, he comes up with good nicknames. I mean, Big Gretch would be a good one. Big Gretch with the big dong. My name is Gretchen. And so, like, this, still, I did this commentary on this, and after I did it, I was like, oh, I should have talked about that weird thing she said. Because Trump is, one good thing he does is he comes up with funny nicknames, funny derogatory nicknames. And that woman from Michigan isn't one of them. Like, she just made that, like, you know, just to make it sound like Trump knew who she was or had a nickname for her. But just whatever. It's Big Gretch. So I was originally going to lead with this video, but I went with the Trump stuff and, you know, his being fake Christian. This is here.
Let our people go! Let our people go!
So this is Donny O'Sullivan. Now, I had a number of Irish viewers say he's a wanker. That he's a wanker. And he got kicked out of Ireland because no one liked him. And now he's coming to America, and he's the anti-truther guy. And what he does is he finds the stupidest of the stupid, you know, not real truthers, QBs, you know, these, you know, morons, you know, whatever it is, right-wing people. And, you know, you can easily do that. You can easily find crazy people in every, you know, whatever it is, organization, every movement. The truth community isn't a movement, but it's people who are just fed up being lied to. And crazy people can often see through the bullshit. It's just that they're crazy, so they come up with crazy explanations and whatever. But there's crazy people in the truth community, probably more so than other communities, just because that's always part of it, right? He finds the crazies, and then they make fun of them because CNN is losing to the truth community. And it's this kind of disingenuous reporting is why. It's not realistic. It's deceptive. It's lying. It's manipulative.
From the comfort of the sidewalk and the car. Trump is your president. Some prisoners. Please do not try and come across the street. Back up.
Tony, I'm right behind you.
Traitors!
Ah, there we go. This is your enemy list.
This is the deep state target list.
It's the deep state target list for the Retribution tour.
The portion of it.
Who's target number one?
Who's target number one? Donny O'Sullivan. This guy he was on whatever that show was with Brian Stelter that went off. They took it off. And, whatever sources it's called, reliable sources. And their whole thing is to say, well, all the information on the internet's bullshit, and we're giving you the truth. But then they come out and do this disingenuous shit because you can find crazy, violent people. So this is a 13-minute promo from a series or a show CNN investigates the rise of extremism in the United States. But there are certainly left-wing extremists. And so if you're going to be like, legitimate news organization, you would go and find all forms of extremism, not just, Trump extremism.
There's a huge disconnect between the narratives and angles that sort of mainstream media pushes and what the American public feels.
I'm not sure yet if you are or are not on the deep state target list, because I haven't consumed all of the information that you've put forth to determine what your status should be.
But we've been hanging out
as we ruin you.
If you put Donny O'Sullivan on your list, you're a joke, because Donny O'Sullivan is not doing any damage. First of all, you're a wanker that kicked out of your own country, and now you're in America. Change your name to Donny. You're not Donny. It's spelled the same exact fucking way. But the Irish, you got rejected in Ireland, so you're here in America sucking. So change your name to Donny like the rest of us. Like the rest of the, you should be in there with all the other Donnies like Donny Osmond and all the rest of them.
Is he what?
What's your documentary about? Oklahoma City, or is it about Waco?
Well, it's about extremism in America.
Okay, so stop talking to me.
Boom, stop talking to that guy.
My fans would love if it's not 2 hours, but I can't do it.
So you could make the gun and the suppressor in a day.
Wait, is that Donny getting his ass kicked?
2 hours, but I can't do it.
Boom, Donny's, you went there and fought, Donny? Come on, Donny.
So you could make the gun and the suppressor in a day.
3, 2, 1.
Well, I just don't like typical jury.
From the whole story with Anderson Cooper.
Not allowed to talk to this person. Like, why can't I talk to him?
There's a growing number of folks that want maximum punishment. Maximum punishment.
I think most people feel like violence is justified in certain instances.
They're dangerous individuals. Back up. America is founded on violence.
We have to fight back.
They want somebody to take on the system.
Misinformation, extremism in America. Misinformation. Like, CNN is giving you the truth. They're reliable sources. Again, this is why they're losing. This kind of, these are probably all real people. I don't think these are actors. And they probably all believe in their bullshit, right? We know it. We have to deal with these motherfuckers all the time, right? Crazy-ass people, emotionally charged. Again, not begging God for forgiveness or changing themselves, but thinking they have to change other people. But people exist like this in every capacity. Extremists exist in all forms of extremity. Any movement's going to have an extreme part of that movement, right? Every government has extremists in it. Every country has extremists. There's right-wing extremists, left-wing extremists. There's vegan extremists. There's Christian extremists, right? Every group has that, that fringe part that wants to take it to the next level. Like, this is, we know that. There's people who are just, they're just ready for battle, and they're just, completely unhinged. And they always try to pin this on the truth community, and it doesn't work because nobody watches it. It's unwatchable. Sunday, 8 p.m. on CNN's The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper. Now, this started off with, this preview has been approved for all audiences, right? And so, what is that? Like, it's been approved for all audiences, right? Where's the thing where it started here? The following is an excerpt from the documentary.
The
January 6, 2025.
6 insurrectionists betrayed our country. Traitors! Traitors! Cowards! Traitors! Ashley Babbitt was a domestic terrorist! Traitors!
So that's a liberal that's trying to provoke these right-wing morons. And Donny O'Sullivan is trying to document it.
Ah, there we go. With the Capitol in the background.
The tree. The General Flynn unmasking, impeachment hoax, 2020 election. So this is your enemy list.
This is the deep state target list. Just a portion of it.
It's on a T-shirt, Tony. A retribution tour. It's on a T-shirt. Some bald fuck in front of the Capitol on a T-shirt. You know, like I mean, there's going to be violence when everything breaks down. And it's breaking down now. And it's breaking down because of suckiness, like just the inability to rise up to a higher level. You know, disconnection from God and just, you know, all this stuff. But CNN and all the mainstream bullshit is a part of why everything's breaking down. You've lied for so many years and, you know, been shills for the CIA and the government. And so people have been moved to the internet where, in the social media, where they can connect with other people like themselves and they can find this kind of stuff. And then the rhetoric is growing. And so eventually, yeah, there's going to be violence because fucking you guys all created this, right? I mean, the people who run the system, if you guys were good leaders and you're real journalists, then there wouldn't be a need for this kind of shit, right? You guys would still have a fucking audience. But you guys all sold out to corporations and bullshit CIA propaganda and whatever it was. And now you got deep state motherfuckers here with a retribution tour.
Some of the high-value targets, if you will.
Who's target number one?
I'd probably say Nancy Pelosi.
Right.
Yep.
Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi. Tony, you're taking this seriously? Like, this guy's got it printed on a fucking T-shirt. And he's putting this out there on CNN. If he isn't an actor, he's a moron. Because why would you do that? When you're going to commit crimes and you're going to do things like this, you do it in secret, right? This isn't an assassin. This is a moron. They got a hit list printed on a T-shirt. And he's showing it to Tony O'Sullivan.
Ivan Raiklin is a far-right extremist.
Yeah! There he goes. He's got a sniper rifle. You got to watch out for this fucking guy. Like, nobody's going to suspect this guy.
Just hit the deep state right in the heart.
He just killed the deep state.
Who do you think was ultimately responsible for the attack on the Capitol?
So, I would say probably me. I'm the one.
President
He's the guy.
Trump retweeted a memo from an individual named Ivan Raiklin entitled Operation Pence Card that called on the vice president to refuse the electoral college votes from certain states that had certified Joe Biden.
That guy actually is fucking Trump retweeted him. This is wonderful.
Winner.
So my legal strategy forced Nancy Pelosi to conduct the deliberate breach and facilitate the deliberate incited entrapment of January 6th. That is why I'm responsible. Exposing the Nancy Pelosi Fedsurrection of January 6th.
He looks like a little cartoon character, right?
Promotes the
There's an actor that is a child actor. He was in that movie Breaking Free or whatever that bike movie was, a really old movie, Breaking Away. And then he's still acting. Like he played in one of those DC comic movies about with some fringe DC comic thing. He played one of the superheroes, but he was a vigilante. He was killing people. And he's always angry. Now he's bald, but I forget what the actor, I don't know his name, so I didn't forget it. But he looks like that guy, right?
Conspiracy theory that January 6th was a setup.
Some people call it a entrapment, a Fedsurrection, a parliamentary coup.
Your shirt, it has a list of names of the...
He wears it everywhere like a fucking moron, right? The guy, he's promoting himself. He's not an assassin. I mean, yeah, he owns a sniper rifle and he's got a T-shirt with a hit list on it. Doesn't make him a fucking assassin.
Retribution tour.
And he's got a retribution list.
The Biden
He's got a retribution list and he's checking it fucking twice. But the only problem is he can't read it because he's fucking moron. He put it on the back of the T-shirt. He needs several mirrors to check his retribution list.
Top cover up the COVID-19 pandemic.
For those he believes have wronged President Trump and the American people.
Jim Clapper, right? Mike Hayden, Brian Kemp, Brad Raffensperger. The list goes on and on.
I prefer the term retribution.
Liz Cheney, we're coming for you. Adam Kinzinger, we're coming for you.
You mentioned Pelosi. What do you think she would be charged with in this scenario?
This guy doing his own documenting this thing because in case Donnie does some fancy fancy CNN editing to make this guy look like a fucking moron, right?
I mean, it's simple statute. This is treason.
Treason.
Absolutely. And I would like to see at the end of the due process, lawful capital punishment.
Will you be disappointed if in 12 months from now somebody hasn't been executed for treason?
I think the nation will be furious.
He says even I could be a target.
I'm not sure yet if you are or are not on the deep state target list, because I haven't consumed all of the information that you've put forth to determine what your status should be.
But we've been hanging out
as we ruin you.
As you what?
Just like you ruined us. An eye for an eye. Look up Leviticus.
Leviticus. Wait, this guy's got a favorite Bible quote. I almost stopped it. I almost moved on to something else, but I'm glad I kept going.
Christian man.
We have a problem with
Is a Christian eye for an eye.
Jewish supremacy. We have a problem with a Jewish occupation in our government.
Technology has transformed extremism in America. It's your body.
Okay, so it's all right-wing extremism. There's Luigi.
Crusaders in a fight for
There's
good
Luigi.
versus evil.
Let's beat them. And these other people, like, you know, whatever, they go through it. It's just long. Let's see.
Memorial for Ashley Babbitt.
Ashley Babbitt.
Who was killed by police.
She was killed by police on a dig day.
The flowers away on the Capitol. Ashley Babbitt, I actually stomped on her memorial. Anyway, this is...
Trump is your president! Trump is your president! J6ers are being pardoned! J6ers are being...
She's the woman that came in, the liberal woman who said she stomped on Ashley Babbitt's memorial. Like, this is what they're doing here, right? Fucking...
all these demonstrators all rushed towards the main door of the jail. We're not sure quite what is happening. Some of the people inside this prison are hoping to make it to the inaugural balls tonight. They have been told that if they're released... Yeah, okay. We're going to move down here, Anderson.
Put the press back, push the press back. Gary's right here.
Look at this cutting-edge thing. This is the January 6th pardons by Trump.
Everybody back up. We're back where we were. The lights, you're an hour and a half until this happens, guys. Back up, please. Set it up on the ground.
He's an ultra MAGA. This guy isn't just a MAGA. He's fucking ultra. He's ultra fucking MAGA. You know, the moronic nature of American people, and, you know, certainly the news covers this, and the news is this, shows you why why would God want to save this? He's ultra MAGA, this guy. He's not just MAGA.
Back up on the ground.
The night went on, but the releases never came.
I was told by inmates here that they'll let us out in the morning if they haven't done it tonight.
Is it sinking in now that, you know, you're going to be a free woman soon?
Okay, go back to when you're 6 years old and it's Christmas Eve and you know when you wake up in the morning, Santa will have left gifts for you. That's how I feel right now.
Boom. That's just exactly how you should feel coming out of this cold-ass fucking prison.
The next morning,
look at that.
Christmas arrived.
Woo! Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. We always said we're...
Imagine sitting outside of jail. I mean, if it's your loved ones, that's one thing. But a lot of these people don't have anybody in there that they know or are related to.
You're a true patriot.
You're a true patriot.
Across the country, January 6ers were set free.
Boom. January 6ers.
And not just people like Rachel, but leaders of extremist groups. Proud Boys.
Proud Boys. Sucking face with their loved ones.
3%ers.
3%.
Oath Keepers.
Oath Keepers.
Kid invalidated.
Many with no plans of going quietly into the night.
We've got the dream team. We're back.
The worst thing they did was put us in prison because I'm now friends with all the gangster disciples, the Bloods, Crips, all those guys in prison. They love us.
Okay, so you were in prison, a federal prison with Bloods and Crips. They love us. Do they love you a lot? How much do they love you? Do they love you from behind? I'm now friends with the Bloods and the Crips. Now we're super January 6th extremists. Now we got Bloods and the Crips going with us.
Big O's back. People say you're the guy that pushed your feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk. It's just not true. I put it on the people's desk.
Amen. I got a criminal news network photographer, maybe a reporter. I wanted to ask you, sir,
your buddy Donnie.
I'm working here.
Is he still in the ER?
And for at least one man,
You are now on my radar.
it was a sign that the retribution was about to commence.
I'm going to be scrutinizing you.
But at the same time,
At least got a halo for shooting a guy.
it wasn't just
he's made into a saint for shooting a CEO.
those on the right celebrating violence.
Okay, but all those people, Trump is giving him the death penalty. So, all these people who are into Luigi, these Trumpers, Trump and his fucking Pam Bondi are going after the death penalty for Luigi. Because Trump isn't having it where you're killing his CEO buddies, right? We're so fucked. Okay, so the title of this video is, "This woman dated only far-right men for a year. They were so insecure." So this is from CNN. I haven't watched the video yet. But, again, I'm not defending far-right men and this whole thing. But if a far-right man dates a liberal woman, even if she does it subtly, she is going to be questioning his belief system constantly, right? Like, it's the worst combination, a far-right man and a liberal feminist woman. Like, you can't get into a worse combination than that, right? Because, they're like natural enemies. There's lots of various demographics of people that are naturally at war, but this is the worst. And so let's get into it here.
CNN's Donnie O'Sullivan got in the cage with former UFC star turned podcaster Jake Shields to explore the manosphere and why exactly it's so popular.
They speak liberal, they have liberal friends, and then they go online and they are a white supremacist.
This is Vera Papasova. She spent the last year dating far-right men in New York City for a story for Cosmopolitan magazine.
Okay, so right there, this is like that stupid movie, How to Lose a Man in 10 Dates or something like that. And the premise of the movie was, I think it was, whoever that girl is, Kate, so whatever, Goldie Hawn's daughter, and that dude from Texas. Whatever his name is, doesn't matter. I didn't watch the whole movie. I watched like a brief part of it. And I knew it was going to suck just from the title. But he was, I think the guy bet, like he was living at home and he was, or some kind of shit, or he had bet, maybe that was a different movie, but failure to launch. And I didn't watch that one either. Same guy. But he had a bet that he could sustain a relationship with a girl or something, or some kind of thing. Maybe money was involved, a bet or something with his parents. And so she had a story to do and he had a bet with somebody else. And, bad comedy ensues. But it's one of those things where you're going in not looking to date far-right men. You're looking to write a story about them. So, they're a subject. And, that's already, you're not going to get an accurate assessment of the relationship, right? Because that's like a scummy thing to do. It's like, when the CIA or undercover, intelligence agency, whatever it is, MSA, CIA, FBI, when these people go in and pose like they're one of the group, that's just a scummy thing to do. There's an FBI agent that was one of these far right-wing groups, and he married a girl and had like 3 kids with her. She was embedded for like 6 years. And so
They're the most insecure men I've ever sat down with.
Okay, look at her. Look at this girl.
Magazine.
They're the most insecure men I've ever sat down with.
Okay, so what's your assessment? Like, you're not a awake person. And I'm not saying right-wing men are great or anything like that. Like, they're not insecure. But, you're pretending to go out with them because you're writing an article and you're like a stone-cold bitch, right? And you are going in judging them and not liking them. And that would make anybody tight and insecure, right?
It was really difficult to have some of these dates because they were so insecure, because they don't really know who they are and they don't know how to figure that out.
She said,
"Oh my God, like she's a reporter." Like Donnie O'Sullivan's a reporter. This is the level of journalism, wearing this freaking leopard coat.
Men she dated got all their news and information from the so-called manosphere.
They did
No
not.
way. That's just crazy. You mean they don't get good information from CNN? Of course they're insecure. With all the manly men like Anderson Cooper and Donnie O'Sullivan and Jake Tappers and Wolf Blitzer and Don Lemons, right? With all these manly men over there where you could get examples of secure men, right? I must be missing some too. But
Not listen to anything else. They're only listening to independent media, and they're only listening to men talking to men.
The manosphere
no
is
way. Then they must be really insecure.
made up of macho podcasters and influencers.
There's no such thing as an independent female. Most women have zero concept of like money.
Females don't have independent thought.
It's a space where UFC fighters are among those who reign supreme.
They love the UFC guys. They love the MMA guys because those guys do what they can. They're modern gladiators.
They're modern gladiators. She's like dead inside. Like, how old are you? You got the energy of a 90-year-old.
They're badass.
They're badass.
Badass like Jake Shields, a former UFC star turned podcaster.
Sorry. Now I'm starting to feel nervous. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course.
Who I met at an MMA gym in Las Vegas.
Like all great MMA pros.
Jesus, Donnie. Can you, Donnie or Donnie? Donnie. You know, I put a leprechaun hat on this guy forever in previous videos. And he's trying to be funny and he's not. He's a fucking tool. But is there anybody more out of shape over at CNN? And I don't think they have a lot of great athletes since, you know, Chris Cuomo used to work out in his basement, left their ranks. But he's really out of shape. Like, he's definitely obese. And, you know, he's got asthma, like, apparently. And there's no reason for him to, he's out of his weight class, at least, you know, technically, right? If you trim down to his fighting weight, he'd probably lose a good 100 pounds and he'd be out of his weight class. It isn't like the 100 pounds of fat he's carrying on him is going to help him with a professional MMA fighter. So it's silly. Like, why are you getting in the ring with him? Like, this, you want to be a legitimate reporter and you're shitting on extremists and right-wing shit and internet stuff, and then you're going to do this goofy thing of getting in the fucking ring with a trained MMA fighter? I mean, Jesus Christ, Donnie.
I've never hit anyone in my life.
I'm not punching back. Hit me. No, I sit right here. KO.
I think he just wanted to have the guy and get on top of him. Donnie just wanted to have this. This is what Donnie wanted. This is what Donnie really secretly desires. He's like so aroused right now. The guy's crotch is on his...
This is CNN. Do you miss being full-time pro, like, in terms of...
Yeah, you know, of course I miss it. To go from...
Plus, that you don't use those... That's not what the kind of gloves they use.
Professional athlete, which is the highest of highs, to retirement.
And I guess the
podcast has helped. You could fall into depression if you just go from the most amazing career where you're famous and spotlights to all of a sudden you're a nobody.
Sure.
Like other podcasters in the manosphere, Jake regularly hosts controversial guests.
And I named the podcast Fighting Back. I feel like we have to fight back what we're told we're allowed to do. I just don't like to be told you're not allowed to talk to this person. Like, why can't I talk to him? I'm not saying I agree with his ideology, but I should hear what he has to say.
He's hosted the former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
Today I have a very, very special guest, Dr. David Duke. I knew you're...
David Duke's looking pretty, like, not a human being. Look at the haircut.
You're controversial, but I had no idea how controversial.
And Thomas Russo, the leader of the white supremacist group Patriot Front.
Patriot Front.
Let's go where we disagree a little bit.
Yes, sure.
Let's hit race, because you're a white-only group?
So the organization only allows people of American ethnicity, and all Americans, I believe, come from Europe, so they're white.
All Americans come from Europe. You hear what this motherfucker just said? All Americans come from Europe. Let's go back to that. Like, the people just don't know how fucking stupid they are.
Ethnicity, and all Americans, I believe, come from Europe, so they're
All
white.
Americans come from Europe. Fucking classic.
The true heirs of the American spirit fight on!
Yeah, no, I understand and talk to these guys, but I've also not brought anyone hateful. If I do, I'm going to be really on top of them.
But so you saying that you haven't brought someone hateful on, right? People say, well, you brought on
the Grand Wizard of the KKK. You brought on Patriot Front.
Yeah.
They're hateful.
No, I think it's those are
Okay, great question, Donnie. No wonder you're doing so great at CNN. Those fucking masterful questions. You brought these two guys on, and they're hateful.
Questions, but if people go and watch the actual interviews, I think they would be like, "Oh, this guy's not near as hateful as if I expected."
But Vera says hate isn't what the men she dated were really looking for.
One of these guys brought me to a political meeting.
And did they talk about politics?
Barely. They talked about, it was a bunch of men complaining about girlfriends and wives, regurgitating Andrew Tate type of advice about how to train your girlfriend, how to train your wife to be submissive. And so
he brought you, one of your dates brought you to that? Like, the key to that would be not to allow the women there so they wouldn't know your game plan. He brought you to... There's a real quality brain there for that guy.
This group was supposed to be a political group, but they're talking about relationship problems. And the fact that that's what most of the time was spent on, you don't need to be a neo-Nazi. You need therapy.
The appeal
you need therapy
of Jake's podcast speaks to a need among young men in this country that Vera says can't be ignored.
You have to incentivize someone to want to be better. You can't just say, let's make men better. The thing about these guys is their biggest support system is online, but that also is very isolating, and isolation is what...
because men have been told now for a good 5 years, 10 years, I mean, since the age of Trump, that men are worthless, especially white men, but all men in general. And, I mean, we had that, whatever that was, at CNN thing where they're talking about how, this is why Kamala Harris lost the election. Trump went and met with all these fucking guys. A lot of them suck. The Paul brothers, all those fucking guys, right? But they're angry and they're being disenfranchised. And it's, and I've said this before, when you complain about disenfranchising people, when you do to men what you say men did to you, then don't complain about what men did to you, right? You're saying that people in general will always do what the bad things to other people that are done to them. So don't complain about those things, right? If you're willing to engage in the behavior that when you get the power, right? What happens when you get the power? And so for a brief period of time, the liberals had the power. They might have it again soon, right? We had it under the Biden administration and, somewhat under Trump. And what do? They censored everybody, right? Not just men, but anybody with a different opinion. And they demonized men and talked about men being a piece of shits. And, they hired based in ethnicity and based in all these things. I mean, all of Biden's appointments, including his vice president and that Supreme Court justice, was based in gender and race, right? He was hiring people based in gender and race. And you're complaining about that for years, about nepotism and these things. And so, there was this show on CNN. They brought a guy in who was, not a right-wing guy, but talking about how men are being excluded. And he showed a list of something Kamala Harris put out on, who her party supports, right? Who her party, who she was going to work for. And number one was women, and men were not there in a 16-part list. And then she was trying to get men at the last minute because, she realized they needed half the population. And so this whole thing is just fucking silly. Like, it's just, the whole system's a mess. It's been a mess for years, but now it's, all the wounds and all the fissures and all the fault lines are being expressed as destructive energy surges through them.
Breeds hatred.
Groups like Patriot Front offer community, but community based on racism and hate.
No way. Look at that guy. Look at this guy getting crucified. Looks like a white dude with abs. All right. That's enough of this guy.
Nobody is calling out the president, Donald Trump. I will. And I'm not going to call him names and all of this stuff like stupid folks on the left doing, engaging in incendiary rhetoric. It's unnecessary, it's immature, and it's uncalled for. He's the president of the United States.
That's your whole thing. That's your whole stick, right? Incendiary rhetoric.
Treat him with the respect that he deserves, but in the same breath, call him to the carpet for stuff that he's doing.
All right, that was Stephen A. Smith, host of ESPN's First Take.
So this is ABC News, which is connected to ESPN, right? Disney, ABC, Disney, ESPN. I mean, they're all one umbrella corporation.
He's one of the most, maybe the most listened to sports commentator in America. Lately, he's been talking a lot about politics. And this week, he opened the door to a possible run for president in 2028. So joining me now, Stephen A. Smith. Thank you very much for being here on This Week. So
Happy to be here.
We'll get to your possible political future in a second. But you said when Trump got elected, we should give him a chance. How's it going? I mean, what's your take on where Trump is now at day 80 plus?
Well, I don't like what I'm seeing, but I'm not surprised. I mean, this whole tariff war situation is utterly ridiculous. I mean, my attitude is that he should have immediately targeted China and not every nation on the planet, for crying out loud, just throwing tariffs at everybody. Ultimately, he dialed that back, as we saw over the last few days, and folks on the right are
Let's get to the next part where he talks about being
we're spending about $2 trillion more, than the end, what it comes down to.
Stopping immigration. What about this idea that we can bring back American manufacturing?
Okay, so that's stupid shit. Let's see what he asked him about running for president.
Well, let me ask you about the Democrats. So Elizabeth Warren talked about getting Congress to stop him. I mean, that's not really going to go anywhere. You got the House's control. As Trump was praising her, what did you make of Whitmer trying to engage Trump? Should she have used that opportunity? She's there to actually.
Let's just ask him a question where he's going to run for president. All right, here. Somewhere along the line, he has to ask him about running for president.
Bannon was on with Bill Maher, and he was asked what Democrats he worries about. And the only name he mentioned as a Democrat he'd be worried about. So are you really thinking about running for president? Is this something you think?
Listen, I have no choice, because I've had elected officials, and I'm not going to give their names, elected officials coming up to me. I've had folks who are pundits come up to me. I've had folks that got a lot of money, billionaires and others, that have talked to me about exploratory committees and things of that nature. I'm not a politician. I've never had a desire to be a politician. I just signed a contract extension with ESPN. I am very, very
pretty
happy
good one, too,
with my day job. I'm very happy with my bosses. It's a pretty damn good one. Just right. It's a pretty damn good contract. I couldn't be happier. But here's the reality. People have walked up to me, including my own.
Sounds like Trump would say, right? All these people are coming up. Everyone wants me to run.
Own pastor, for crying out loud, who has said to me, you don't know what God has planned for you. At least show the respect to the people who believe in you, who respect you, who believe that you can make a difference in this country, to leave the...
Okay, so let me just get into this. I want to comment about it. He said he doesn't have a choice. And so Stephen A. Smith has no chance of winning the presidency. So, this is just silly. And this idea of outsiders or whatever it is, he's very unlikable. He's... What he does at ESPN, what he does well, like what Trump does well, Trump is good at self-promotion. Stephen A. Smith is great at picking, hot takes and taking controversial stands, or having someone else on the show take a controversial stand and created arguments, right? These hot takes and just unnecessary things. Oftentimes they're imaginative, and they're about things that have, debating whether Michael Jordan's better than LeBron James, or these types, who's the GOAT, these kind of things. And lists, putting up these lists of who their favorite is, and then condemning or you're shitting on the other people's lists. He's good at doing that. And this, point counterpoint, where there's combative drama and arguments and talking real loud and doing this stuff, draws views. And it draws views on the internet, and it draws views on ESPN. But he isn't really good at analyzing sports. He really doesn't understand basketball the way he should, and he doesn't understand other sports even less. His biggest number one sport is commenting on basketball and these things. And, basketball has a lot of drama with it. But he isn't really great at predicting things or analyzing things, but he's good at creating content that will make people watch, oftentimes they don't like him. People will tune into who don't like him just to get angry and argue and these things, right? And so, that isn't, that's kind of what Trump does, but he doesn't have a base of people that love him. He has a lot of people in the black community have accused him, various athletes. There's a guy, Kwame Brown, who was an 18-year-old first-round draft pick of Michael Jordan, like the number one overall pick by Michael Jordan when Michael Jordan ran the Wizards, and he was a bust. And Stephen A. Smith was apparently brutal about him, and that guy now has his own podcast where he shits all over Stephen A. Smith. And then there's other people, with black guys with podcasts that talk about him, kind of being a sellout and things like that. He went after Kyrie Irving so much so, and it was about Kyrie and the vax, and I called him out on that for, multiple videos on my other channel. And, he said that he was questioning the vax himself, but he couldn't, he couldn't go to work, and he wanted his $8 million a year, and I think he's making more now at ESPN. And so he wasn't going to give up his $8 million, so he took the vax. But Kyrie Irving, who had the balls to stand up to, I mean, not only his team and the league, but the media and the fucking government in New York for those goofy mandatory rules that they put in place we all know are bullshit. And he went after Kyrie Irving, personally, and Kyrie Irving's dad got involved, and he eventually had to apologize for, getting into it with his dad and losing sight of, he gets these petty little wars. He can't take any sort of criticism. He really bitches out, right? And so, he has no chance of winning, and he would be a horrible candidate. If this is the best the Democrats are serious about running him, you would think, all right, where was his strong demographic? Where are the people that are going to really support him? I don't know who that is. He just got into it with LeBron James. LeBron James said, don't you keep my son's name out of your mouth, and these things that he said. He questioned LeBron James as a father. And then he got into it with Draymond Green because Draymond Green went after him for what he said about LeBron James. So basketball players don't even like him. A lot of the top level basketball players won't even do interviews with him. They don't like him. They don't like the guy because he's he pulls up these bullshit takes and these incendiary type of opinions. And so that might play well in terms of what getting a lot of views and shit and getting a lot of attention. But he would be the Democratic Trump, and it won't play nearly as well in the Democratic Party. And it's silly to think that, what qualifications does he have? He doesn't run a business, right? He's a commentator. He's not even like a businessman. He doesn't have, a whole group of employees and a huge, like corporation or something. I mean, as bad as Trump was as a businessman, he has no administrative experience. He just goes up there and says stupid shit and calls attention to himself. A lot like Trump, and Democrats are looking for their own Trump. That's what this means. The Democrats want their own Trump, and, and so as much as they hate on Trump, they want a Democratic Trump.
I heard, I think it was a letter or a report that I heard this morning. I wish I could remember the source, but that there is a school system that's going to start making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching, every year starting. That far down in the grades. And that's a wonderful thing. Kids are sponges. They just absorb everything. And so it wasn't all that long ago that we're going to have internet in our schools. Woo! Now, okay, let's see A1 and how.
Jesus Christ. Okay. She's the education secretary. Remember that guy who said the internet was a series of tubes? He didn't know what the internet was, and he was in charge of the internet. She is fucking stupid. And I saw her on the Vince McMahon documentary, and she was CEO of his company, and I don't know what she does business-wise, but she doesn't have a great mind. And his whole family's stupid. Vince McMahon isn't some genius. I mean, the stuff is so lowbrow and so, fucking, low consciousness and low vibration. He's good at doing that, and Trump loves that shit. But she's not smart. You could hear her when she talks. And she shouldn't be education secretary. She was a really ardent Trump supporter, and Trump had a relationship with Vince McMahon and, did that stuff with him. He was a performer in a couple of their events. And, it's just the low consciousness, right? Unbelievable. And so this fucking guy puts somebody who doesn't know what AI is, doesn't really know what AI is, and saying that first graders should get AI because, they absorb everything. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like that's a bad take. Like AI, we need to. AI is a new thing. You don't want just anything new. You don't put it immediately in kindergarten and first grade and whatever, something like this, right? You just don't do it. Like, it's like, let it, let's let it understand what it is and how it works, and before you give it to little kids, right? Like what new invention? Like, you don't take cell phones. Oh wow, these things are great. We've only had them 2 weeks. Let's start giving them to first graders. Like, when we all know what happens to them when they do that. And so, kids on the internet, it's just not a good situation. Like, you got to limit their time, especially young kids, and they get addicted real quick, and then they're gone. I mean, it's, you want to delay that shit as long as possible. But aside from that, she's calling it fucking A1. Like, that's the biggest takeaway here. Like, what the fuck? Let's watch that again.
I think it was a letter or a report that I heard this morning. I wish I could remember the source, but that there is a school system that's going to start making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching, every year starting, that far down in the grades. And that's a wonderful thing. Kids are sponges. They just absorb everything. And so it wasn't all that long ago that we're going to have internet in our schools. Whoop. Now, okay, let's see A1 and how can that be helpful? How can it be helpful in one-on-one instruction? How can it be helpful in absorbing, more information for those fast learners? It can be more one-on-one directed. And those are the kinds of things and innovations that I want to see continue to develop.
Okay, so her daughter, Stephanie McMahon, there's a storyline. The dad said that she would do every storyline but one. And the one storyline that she didn't want to do was her and her dad had an incestuous relationship, and she impregnated her. And that was one line Stephanie McMahon wouldn't cross. But one line that she didn't have, one boundary she didn't have, was there was a big fat dude, like fucking huge, like 400, 500 pounds, with cellulite, a big fat ass, who always wanted to put his ass on somebody's face. And he did it for Stephanie McMahon. I mean, her face was right in his ass, right? And she went along with that. And her mom let her go along with that, right? Her son, who they excised out of the company, his father picked to go with his daughter rather than his son. He said his son was too nice a guy. They brought his son back to wrestle him. This was a part of the documentary. And the son jumped off of like a 3-story, ladder or tower, like very tall, like, about 20 or 30 feet. 30 feet at least, I would say, onto some fucking table. Dangerous shit like that. When it's not necessary, right? I mean, nobody should be doing that shit there anyway, like even stunt people. But it just, she let these and bizarre, shitty storylines, creepy ass shit, and she was a part of that. And she's now in charge of the fucking education. Like, it's fucking. I mean, it's just so bad. Okay, my energy's starting to fade. I went out shopping, and I have a whole story to say about that involves Ridicule. And so I'll tell that at the beginning of my next video. Why to feel old? This is Caillou today, quality meme, and so there's that. And there's a bunch of weird, quirky shit I was going to show you, but it's like I'm going to do it in the beginning of my next video or sometime in my next video. It's just this video went long with a long introduction. There's one more thing I want to show you here. Actually, there's two more things here. Trends Journal, someone said they've copied my take, but I don't think I have any copyright on calling Donald Trump a piece of shit. I'm sure I'm not the original person. I started to call him that because of all the stuff, but then man of peace, piece of shit. Then my proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker. Houthis, they will be completely annihilated. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. All hell will break loose with Gaza. I'm moving quickly to end wars. I want peace. If we have to go in militarily, it's going to be a terrible thing for them. And that's kind of true to the extent that I used to say that. Well, the one good thing that you can say about Trump's first term was he didn't do a lot of the bullshit wars. Like, he didn't keep them going. But that interesting picture here strawberry there, and this, where's, you know, this strawberry chin and the fucking excellent illustration. There's actually one more thing I want to show you after this. A picture of the Earth before and after, your opinion. You know, flat earthers would not agree with these being actress photos. But, you know, anything, you could say this about anything. Your opinion, like everyone thinks their opinion means a lot more than it does. And it almost has, you know, it has an effect, but not, you know, not in a way that you would want. It doesn't affect changing the world around you. It just changes your internal world and the world internally, you know, people's insides for the worse, right? Your own opinion, other people's opinions, you know, it just warps people's realities, and that affects the material world in a bad way, but not in a way that people would like. So this is the fake Christian Barbie fake truther. And this is from a clip from my last video. And I wasn't sure what my first clip was, right? Like I start the day with a clip, and sometimes I can't find my first clip because I have all, you know, it's a folder where all these clips are saved until I delete it periodically, right? Sometimes I have 1,000 of these little clips. So I put this one in, and this was the first picture, which I didn't notice when I did the video yesterday. But you see she has these very weird lips. Like, I mean, it's just lizard-like. Like, you know, and I don't know, maybe that's just the way when I paused it. But really dull, lifeless eyes. I mean, her whole face and her expression gloomy, you know, depressed. I mean, just, you know, a mess. She's like 27 years old. She's fucked up her face with plastic surgery. She doesn't look human. And sometimes you can catch it, you know, almost reptilian. Almost like this is like a shapeshifter. You know, like her fucking tongue's going to go out and land on a fly on the podium. Or pick a fly out of fucking, you know, Caitlin Collins' hair. But just, you know, fucked up, right? But anyways, let's move on to my next video. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.